Hey, it's Webs here again, and did you know Priest has a lot of elemental cards that they can have access to that no other class has access to? Thus, this creation of mine, Heal Elemental Priest, which is definitely a deck that I don't think anyone's ever really came up with, to be honest. Probably for a good reason. The idea behind this deck is to start out with more of an aggro base strategy with the cards such as Gyre Worm, Kindling Elemental, and the Light Spawn, and then pivot into a more control-based strategy once you get cards online such as Priest of Ashi or Light Shower Elemental. So you can then buff them up and get really big minions, while also using tools such as Zyrelia and Holy Nova in order to clear out the boards, or even a Hysteria, which I included in this deck as a 1 copy of. For mulligans, you usually want to keep cards like Kindling Elemental in your opening hand. Insight's pretty good too, and Light Spawn is really great to keep in your opening hand if you can combo it off with a Kindling Elemental. Even a Gyre Worm is another good card to keep in your opening hand, as long as you can have a Kindling Elemental in your opening hand or a Light Spawn. If you're in a aggro based matchup, you probably want to keep a card like Holy Nova in your opening hand, as it'll allow you to clear out the board. Hysteria is also a good card to keep in your opening hand in that case too. And finally, I would say Palm Reading is the final card that you might consider keeping in your opening hand, as it'll allow you to discount all the spells that you run in the deck, which is a good number of them, and trigger the corruption on Insight. So with all that being said, let's get into the games. Alright, time for game 1 against Mage. This will honestly probably be Questline Mage, it always is. So we're going to keep the Renewal just so we can heal up a little bit, keep the Palm Reading so we can discount all the other cards in our hand. We draw into a Raise Dead, which is kind of bad, given the fact that we have no minions in our hand. We don't want to play a bunch of minions against Questline. And oh look, it is actually Questline. Drawing into a Kindling Elemental, which is actually pretty good. Just going to play it since it's a aura effect and not elemental that gets played this turn. Kind of shocked they didn't even try to kill our elemental. So we can coin out our Palm Reading if we really wanted to, or we can use Thrive in the Shadows to draw into probably Insight as the best option here. Next turn, we can actually trigger the Insight with Palm Reading. They play Incanter's Flow. We draw into a Light Shower Elemental, which is actually pretty good. It'll give us more sustainability. They're just going to combo off on our minion a little bit to complete more parts of their quest. So next turn we have a few options. We can use the Insight to draw another minion out of the deck, or we can use the coin and play our Light Shower Elemental, drawing into a Gyre Worm, and drawing into Zyrelia, which is kind of a dead card in this matchup. Going to grab the Palm Reading, and then just heal up a little bit. Fireball kind of sucks, but I'm glad that they're doing it now instead of when they have it buffed up. Just going to play the Light Shower Elemental. The next turn we can play the Gyre Worm if we really want to, and Palm Reading. They're going to devolve our Light Shower Elemental. I guess more and more mage decks are running that because they're running into a bunch of more big minions. It sucks, but it is what it is. And they can just kill off our minion. Gonna play the Gyre Worm, play the Palm Reading, grab the Insight, always grab the Insight. They'll kill our Gyre Worm. Though we should be able to use our Raise Dead to get more. Though that can be kind of risky against a mage deck. Alright, we need to deal with that this turn, or we're just going to keep taking 7 damage to face. So we can actually deal with this by using our Renewal and getting the Condemn, and using Zyrelia or a Holy Nova. We got really lucky there, to be honest. I'm going to coin out our Insight. Get a Light Shower Elemental, which is great. And then get 2 more Elementals in our hand. I don't like being this low against Questline Mage. They can honestly do this amount of damage in one turn if they really had the cards in the hand. There's the second Fireball. Alright, we're going to play the Light Shower. We're going to heal because we can't do anything else. And then play a Kindling Elemental and a Power Word Feast, which triggers their counterspell, which is good. Rather have that on the Feast instead of a Power Word Fortune. And a second Devolving Missiles. Really can't catch a break with those, can we? So they have a completely empty hand now, which is great for us. There could be one issue though. They could draw into anything that gives them any type of draw power. They're going to get rid of our lightsteed as quickly as possible. I don't know why they didn't just go face. It's not like Priest currently has Inner Fire in current format. Going to heal, play the Priest, then buff up the Gyre Worm. It being Ice Barrier isn't really a shock. Seriously, if they had played their Ignites into my face for the past 2 turns, they would have won this game. Draw into a Light Spawn, which is good, but it's kind of late, to be honest. We're just going to spread out the buffs because we don't want one minion to get a bunch of buffs and then it get devolved again. I know the chances of them having a third devolve is very low, but you never know. Really, why keep igniting our minions? I guess there you had to, but at the same time, they chose the wrong minion to ignite if they were going to do that. They should have done it on the Priest. And we just win. Alright, time for game 2 against Druid. There's a few possibilities of which deck it could be here. Could be Questline, it could be aggro. We're just going to keep everything in our opening hand because it's actually pretty good. The worst card is actually the Kindling Elemental, but because we have the Insight and the Palm Reading, we should be able to draw into a Elemental off of it. To be fair, we only run 3 minions in the deck that aren't Elementals. Drawing into a Light Spawn. Maybe we don't even need the Insight. They're going to coin out a minion. Ah, the Razormane Battle Guard, which lowers the cost of the taunts that they play. Still a good idea just to play the Light Spawn, though. It's nice to actually see Light Spawn back into a Hearthstone deck. It's been quite a while since I've actually made use of this card. Though with Inner Fire gone, the strategy to just buff up one minion completely kinda has went away. Same thing with Divine Spirit, which was the one that doubles the HP, which was really good with Light Spawn. So why did they play their taunt reducer if they had no taunts in their hand? It makes no sense. I guess I can't complain though. So we're going to kill the taunt reducer and the squirrel probably, because that way we can heal up our Light Spawn with our hero power, and then also not have to deal with healing it up next turn. Or we're just going to use our palm reading and still kill the 2 minions. Sometimes I just don't remember these games, to be honest. Or at least the middle part of the game. I remember the endings, which is why I choose which ones I do choose. They're going to kill our Light Spawn. Kinda to be expected, but oh well. Going to use the Insight, draw into our second Light Spawn. I guess it was no use for them to actually kill our first one. Just going to heal up a little bit. Drawing into the Pack Mule. Going to play their second Battle Guard and play their 2 Pack Mules probably. Or just one. Nope, both. So we can Holy Nova here and Condemn, which will actually wipe out their board. Or we could just Holy Nova twice, I guess. It's better to use the Holy Nova that isn't discounted, just because of a later turn we might need to use the discounted Holy Nova when we want to make a big push turn. The downside here, though, is we just deactivated our Priest of Nshi. Drawing to the Lightsteed. Though I think the card to play is actually probably the Light Shower Elemental. There's some times where lightsteed is just a dead card in your hand, but at the same time, by playing your lightsteed on the board, it usually means that if you don't combo off with it that turn, someone's just going to instantly kill it off because they're thinking there's going to be some big threat behind it. But in truth, honestly, it's not really a card that they need to instantly kill. Sure, it makes your minions bigger, but that doesn't actually help with how much damage each minion is doing. I wonder if this was their first time actually playing this deck, or they just really got unlucky. So we can actually combo off the Lightsteed with the Holy Nova here, even though our minions are at full HP. And then just attack into Panther, get rid of it. Sure, our Light Elemental is now down to a 2/2. But next turn we should be able to get it up to a 4/4 again. Or actually a 6/6, because then we'll get additional 2 HP from the Lightsteed. They're going to play Cornelius, which is perfectly fine. We can actually deal with him instantly this turn. Grabbing the Gyre Worm out of the deck, though, is really good. Though, to be honest, what I probably should have done here, instead of filling that card up, is play the Priest and not use the Gyre Worm there. Sure, the Gyre Worm would have been offline the next turn, but still. There's a Teacher's Pet. And then a Toad of the Wilds. Trying to raise dead. Gonna heal up the Light Spawn and then play our Priest. Ooh, a Scorpion. We need to kill that this turn. Yeah, another Gyre Worm off of the raised dead. To be honest, this is honestly one of the most perfect games that I could have ever had with this deck. Ooh, that Watch Post is a few turns too late, my friend. I guess they just bricked. Alright, now that we're through the games, let's discuss how well the deck did and why I built the deck the way I did. So, I decided to build this deck because I noticed during one of my earlier decks, the Questline Priest deck, there were actually a lot of Priest-only elementals in current standard format. And I had originally tried to shove those into Questline. However, it kind of became too clunky to consistently use those cards in Questline, even though they fit the curve for the Questline perfectly. And I had been sitting around trying to figure out a new deck to profile for a video, and I came up with the idea of Elemental Priest. This isn't completely how I stylized it the first time. The first time I stylized it around the Mana Devourers, I think they're called, the 8 cost. However, I figured those were too slow for this deck, and I wasn't running a huge amount of buff spells, so I didn't want to actually run them in the deck, or even cheap spells. This ended up becoming a pretty good combination with the format that I ended up going with, because then it allowed me to focus more on an early game while having some late game strategies. It also allowed me to add some synergistic cards with healing spells, which is another archetype that Priest has access to that a lot of people don't actually use. And between the two, it actually became a relatively solid deck, to my surprise, which was great news for me. Though the deck isn't without its problems. If you're going against a matchup that is more of a late style deck, if you don't get early game board advantage, you most of the time lose once they start putting down big minions. However, if you can get that early board advantage, you usually win the game against control matchups. A deck that's honestly the bane of any heal style deck right now is Questline Mage. Sometimes you can actually out aggro them before they get their questline completed, or out heal them, but most of the time you won't be able to, which was honestly probably the worst matchup the deck had. For really good matchups was anything that was actually aggro based, mainly because you had also an aggro based strategy, but you also had a late game plan to deal with a bunch of their early game minions, which is something that's kind of necessary in the current metagame against most of the current aggro decks, as it gives you an advantage where most of them don't have any way to deal with a big minion once you drop it on board, and then you can just slowly buffing up those big minions until you just finish them off in one turn. The card that probably felt the most awkward in the deck is Raise Dead. This is probably due to the fact that you don't run that many minions per se. However, it was still pretty useful to generate extra gyre worms or another kindling elemental, or even more light spawns after your opponent tried to get rid of them as quickly as humanly possible, since this could be a huge threat for them, which is the reason why I decided to keep them in the deck. Holy Nova is also another card that, while it helps clear out your opponent's aggro-based boards, because a lot of aggro boards right now have 3 HP, you can always clear them out. However, this allowed you to combo off with Lightsteed, which is the reason why it was included in the deck, and thus allowed you to buff up your board while clearing out a bunch of their board. However, if I had to redo this deck, I would probably cut one Holy Nova for another Hysteria, because this would allow you to deal with a bunch more big minions instead of a bunch of little minions. With that all being said, if you have been looking for a unique priest deck, this is probably a deck for you. It's not that expensive to craft. There is literally only one legendary in the entire deck, and it's actually used in quite a few priest decks. Most of the other cards are either common or part of the core set, which is great. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, subscribe, and a comment down below, and until next time, bye bye.